Hey everybody, welcome back to Bench Your Addiction with Greg and Ryan. Today we're going to talk about staying the course and what that looks like. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more what we were just talking about, Greg.
So, yeah, yesterday. So I've been on this paint job for a couple of weeks now, and we've already gotten one of the floors done. We're on the third floor now, and uh, one of the things that I really appreciate about the strongman training and the competitions that I've been doing is that it's trained me exactly for what I'm doing right now, which is picking things up and walking with them. So we got 5-gallon buckets of paint and primer that we have to get to the third, get to whatever floor that we're on. And this time, obviously, we're at the third floor, and um, you just each bucket probably weighs around 55 pounds. So obviously, when you're walking with both, you got somewhere around 100 pounds in your hands. And not only that, but you have to walk upstairs in order to get it to wherever we're going. And yesterday, there was this guy, like, God bless him, man. He was doing the best that he could, but or so he thinks. So he'd pick up the like we were making trips, and he was solid for one trip upstairs, and then after that he'd bring the buckets to the bottom of the stairs, and he'd have to stop because everything in his body was burning, everything was like he was breathing heavy, whatever. We all know that feeling if we've pushed really hard, and I've gotten to that point so many different times, and it was brought to my attention by a coach I had back in 2019. Is like, just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that you have to stop. Just because you're breathing heavy doesn't mean that you have to stop. Because if you're breathing heavy and you keep going, you're gonna just keep breathing. Like, you're not gonna die. There are stories of humanity that have been able to physically exert themselves to a point of literal physical death. But my coach pointed out that I'm not nearly physically tough enough to be able to do that. So I'm at no risk of dying. You can keep going. so, so I was breathing heavy too. It wasn't like, I was, and sweat was dripping off my face. It's not like I'm impervious to that, but I'm just have a mental that is completely aware of the fact that, like, I think David Goggins said it best. Is like, when you think that you've given everything that you've got, you're only 50% there, or something like that. I butchered the comment, but anybody that knows David Goggins knows what I'm talking about. It's just like, when you think you've gone, just given everything, you're not even halfway. Like, you're not even there, because, like, there's always a relative greater effort. And so I was breathing heavy, sweat was dripping off my face, and I couldn't carry on a full sentence if I really needed to, without having to stop for the breathing. But I knew that I could keep going. So he'd get these buckets to the bottom of the stairs, and he said he got it, and was like, we got stuff to do, man. So I grabbed the buckets and I kept going, and my shoulders and traps were burning. My lats were starting. My lats were starting to give out. Interestingly enough, even though I went up, I don't even know how many flights of stairs yesterday. My legs were fine. I obsessed about my legs for a long, long time, and they just don't fall out from underneath me. And promise you, no matter how uncomfortable you are, there's no reason to stop. Because when you think that you've given everything that you've got, you're not even close.
Yeah, so like science actually backs up a lot of this data too. What you're talking about, like most people when they're working out severely underestimate how strong they can go, and like that's the benefits of generally working with a trainer. Is they're going to push you, or a coach, right? They're going to push you past that limit. Most people underestimate their own strength and capacity by about 30 or 40%. Like when they actually push them, and like in peer reviewed studies. So yeah, go harder, right? Like, and as a trainer, it's funny because sometimes people don't respond well to that, and sometimes people respond really well to that. And I have clients that like I talk to different ways about it, right? I definitely have clients that I talk to about it, like David Goggins would, like, quit being a little bitch about this, bro. Pick up the weights, right? You know what I mean? Like, don't look at me like you haven't done this before. We've done this literally last week, and you're gonna be like, oh, it's hard today. Like, oh, cool, it's hard every day, bro. That's why you're here. You know what I mean? Then I have other clients where I'm like, it's okay if you don't feel like that today. Like, that's fine. Like, but it's funny how like people respond better to different things. I've learned a lot of ways of like how to talk to people, right? Like, I have one client that you know, she gets mad when she's left out of things in like social situations. And I've known her for a really long time, so we've been friends for a long time. And I and so she's been kind of unmotivated lately. And I was like, all right, you just don't want to get left behind, do you? And like I just saw that fire kick on in her. She's like, I don't want to be left behind. I want to do this. And I was like, cool, let's go, let's go. You know what I mean? Like it got her motivated to work out. Like and and talking about staying the course too, man. Like I've been really loving being able to work out again now that I've got like a slight surplus of calories again after coming off of my competition season. Man, like staying the course, man. I was cutting from March through, when was my last show? September. March through September, I was cutting,
Wow.
man. Yeah, I cut like 23 pounds, like, sat around 4.5% body fat for about 8 weeks between the two shows. Like, there was plenty of points where I was just like, this is brutal. I'm freezing. It's sunny out and I'm freezing cold, right? Just because I have no body fat. I'm like this in my gym. My clients are dripping sweat. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. You'll be okay. Like making it through that, right? So now that I'm on a surplus of calories, man, I've been crushing it at the gym and feeling the same way. Like I was doing the sets of like supersets of legs of like, really weird. I'm like that weird bodybuilder in the corner doing weird stuff now. It's funny. I catch myself like I was doing raised heel, elevated deep lunges, superset with raised heel squats, right? Like just weird shit in the corner. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, like on the slant board. So my raised heel up and over
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Man, there was like halfway through that second or third set, I was like dripping, dying. My legs felt like they're gonna explode. I was just like, cool, Meryl, you got like 3 more sets. We're just gonna keep going. Right. So
Right.
staying the course and pushing through that. And like it's really fun to push that thing, like and push the limit. Like I really enjoy that, right? Like I enjoy going hard, you know? And that's the kind of thing that like we learn, as people who go to the gym, right? We learn how to stay the course and it shows up in the rest of our life. I'm able to push through things that like normal situations I didn't used to like. Now I just push through. I'm like, yeah, this is easier than the gym. This social situation is easier than the gym. Giving this presentation is easier than my leg day. So what does it matter now, Right?
Right.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, so I find myself like through cardio sessions now. I find myself reverting right back. It took a second, but reverting right back to the mentality that I was when I was doing swim workouts. When I was in the pool for 2 hours, 3 hours at a time, my workouts were 5,000, anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 yards per practice, and then there were plenty of days where there were 2 days, because to some degree, there's just an insane amount of volume that you need in order to improve swimming, to improve your cardiovascular conditioning, right? Like the closer that you get to your peak potential, the longer it takes to improve. And that goes with anything, right? Anything and everything has newbie gains, so to speak. Like when you first start doing something and your nervous system starts to calibrate or your brain starts to adjust or whatever. And like there's always this little bit of frustration at the start. And then like at the beginning of any endeavor is at the beginning of any endeavor, there's this exponential increase in ability, and then after that, like you just have to be willing to trudge, man. You just have to be willing to continue to get 1% better. You have to continue to put in so much more effort for what seems like such a smaller ROI, or like return on investment. So, but that's what gets exciting, man. That like being able being able to stay the course, it relates to being able to see how far you've come. And because something that I heard is like a year from now you would have wished you started today, kind of thing. If you
Yeah.
like if you continue to wait, or if you continue to hold back, you don't know, like nobody's guaranteed any amount of time. Like we take for granted the amount of like the days that we have, and that's why I love the one day at a time. And it's just right now, it's just like, what am I doing right now? What am I doing today? And uh being able to keep focus on, or celebrate, not like with a full freaking party, but to be able to feel good about the efforts that you've made so far. even if you've just started, man, like what you just said, the social situations that you're in isn't any harder than or probably easier than the leg day that you went through. If you've already accomplished one really significantly difficult leg day, you've done that. Like you did that thing, right? And anything that's been done once can be done again. And like doing it again and again and again and again and again, especially in practice hours, man. Like everyone, people see and hear the stories of how you're on stage, but do they really truly understand the depths that you had to do, like off of the stage, preparing for it, and all the hours and all the time that you had to spend at 4% body fat, and all the things that you had to do to continue to maintain that, and all the things that you have to do now so that you don't completely screw it off? Because I know for sure I shredded down in 2019, 2020. I was sitting at somewhere around 5%, but I can tell you for sure I didn't reverse diet properly. As soon as those breaks were let off, as soon as the last picture was taken, I had a giant burrito from whatever Super Birds, whatever it was, Mexican restaurant, and like the following week, I checked in with my coach at the time, and I gained. You want to take a wild guess at how much weight I gained in a week?
16 pounds.
A little bit south of what it was. I
Oh
gained 20.
man.
I gained 20.
Woo.
I gained 22 pounds in 7 days,
Oh man. Yeah,
and
that's not how you reverse
that's
diet.
not how you do it. That's not how you do it, man. I completely, like, the brakes fell off. I saw red.
Oh man.
I was also dabbling with whatever, just smoking some weed at the time, and like as soon as I could stay the course pretty effectively, sober minded, but if I like,
Man, 22 pounds.
I know, right? 7 days. I
Uh,
said I said that check into the coach, and the coach sent me back a message immediately. He
yeah.
usually didn't do that. Like I'd put the check in and at the beginning of the day, and I'd hear from him before the end of the day. But like I hit submit, and he must have been on the email or app or whatever it was, and he immediately was like, "Are you sure? Was that like supposed to be 2.2 pounds?" Or I was like, "No, man, I am 22 pounds of water weight and all the food that's
And
still sitting in my
sodium and
stomach and all the
yeah.
stuff, man."
Man, I'll tell you what, man, the reverse dieting is so hard, man. Like I feel like it's harder than like the cut. Like the cut, I'm like, all right, cool. I got a competition to get to. I got a date. It's like great. I'm going to be on stage, right? It's the 6 weeks after, like where I'm at now, where I'm just like, you still got to control it, man. You still got to come off it easy, right? Like otherwise, you're just going to
Right.
wreck your physique. You know, that's what staying the course is about. And like it, you know, and I wanted to touch back on like that, like reduced return on investment, like the amount of work we put in and the amount of effort we put in, and like when you first started swimming, you got great returns, and then over time it was just work and work and work, and like now it's paying off. You carrying hundreds of pounds of paint up and down the stairs, right? But like I worked for 12 months this off season or this whole last year between shows to put on 6 pounds of muscle. Like there's a huge amount of work and cutting and like bulking and all this work, to get 6 pounds of muscle on my frame, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm gonna do it again this year, and I'm gonna do it in the following year. I'm gonna do it again the following year, and at this point, it's more than just about me, right? Like, I have a kid, right? Like, um, I've talked about this before on the show that like the entire reason I got into fitness was the picture of me that my friend posted and realizing that my wife was pregnant and I had to be different to be a
Yeah.
father, to show up as a father, right? And so I'm going to continue to do these hard things just to show up, right? Just so I set an example for my son, just so when he is ready to start doing things and working out and being more mindful and intentional about it, like I'll be there for him as a guidance. And, now I start thinking in things of like 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, right? Like I'm looking out longer and like, especially after having like 10 years sober, like staying the course isn't like, oh no, what am I going to do next year? It's like, okay, so I'm stable enough at this point, right? Like I know what I'm going to do most likely. Like, so how do we build on this and how do we look forward past that? And I had a meeting with my coach last week and we talked about that. We talked about like where I'm going to be competing in 5 years. What am I going to look like on stage at 40, right? Like I'm 36 now. So like, what are we doing that far out? How is our plan going to look? What year am I going to take off to like really succeed and like to grow, right? Because as a natural bodybuilder, I can't just keep growing year after year without taking serious breaks for a little while.
Yeah.
So, and just like you're going through this transition right now, you know what I mean? Just stay the course, right? it it's crazy how life continues to throw things at you, but the more that you build success, even if you just start building that success in the gym, if you just build the success of being able to complete your tasks, the next task is easier, right? And I was talking with someone about this yesterday, and they were like, "How does that translate? How did when you train someone, how does that translate into real life?" And it's building these little successes, right? Like if you can successfully go to the gym a couple times a week and successfully meal prep and successfully take care of your health, the other areas of your life are going to start becoming easier, right? Because we have this like square that we need to talk about with everybody, right? You got physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. If you don't have all four sides of those dialed in, start chipping away at one of them, right? And once you get the physical dialed in, the next ones become much easier because you've got this like nice foundation. And the reverse side of it is I have a lot of clients coming to me that got these other sides really dialed in, but have no idea about how to do physical. And so we just want to make them whole, more well-rounded people, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting, like what you just triggered in my mind was like, I saw this guy on Monday night pick up his 36-year chip.
Yeah.
And he was, one of the things that he brought up is physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. And I'm not going to be able to phrase it entirely exactly the way that he did, but he said that when you take care of your physical, your mental follows, and when you take care of your spiritual, your emotional follows. And like it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to me. It's just like, how can you be mentally fit if your mind is in an unhealthy body? And how can you be emotionally fit when your spirit's in the garbage, or if you don't have one at all?
Uh-huh.
Or at least it feels like you don't have one at all.
Uh-huh.
And so, but to stay the course, like keeping it like in line with fitness for just a moment, and then tying this back into a little bit more like bigger life concept, I guess. Like the stuff that I'm doing with painting, the stuff that I like carrying the paint primer up 2 or 3 or 4 flights of stairs or whatever, that falls in alignment with the training that I need to be doing for strongman anyway. What do strongmen do? They pick things up and move them, walk with them, like the yoke, the farmer's carries, the stuff like that. So being able to train, I half jokingly thought about bringing the fat grips so that I can put the fat grip handles, put the fat grip handles on the paint and primer things, so that I can make it harder on my grip.
You should
But
do it.
so I will then. I will now. I'll check in next week. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
but um, but then so it falls directly in alignment with what I talked about previously on this podcast. Is the wanting to commit to 10 years of strongman competitions like just to see what can happen, man, because I've made such radical transitions in my life from a completely cardiovascular long distance swimmer athlete into powerlifter strongman competitor. And but staying the course, and one of the things that you mentioned is that you got like one of the things that drives fitness is that you want to set the example for your son. And I think that like at some age you need to start really contemplating how your legacy will be left, and not to say that statues will be erected in your name or whatever, but like the legacy that affects the people that you leave behind. And like because there was a guy that asked me on the job. He's like during one of our food breaks, he asked on the job, like, looked at me and said, "What's your plan for life?" And I said, "Well, this is going pretty well. I think that I'm gonna pick up a trip. Like I'm moving to another state in a couple of months. I'm moving across the country, and like I think I'm gonna stay in the trades. I would rather try to be in a physical trade that forces me to move tile or whatever, paint, or like I'd for a couple of years while I still can. I'd love to be able to do that. And I've contemplated getting back into coaching youth athletics. It was something that was really exciting for me. But my fiance and I have talked about starting a family, and I thought about, maybe I wait to pick up the coaching youth athletics until my children are old enough to be start participating, and then maybe I look at that. And I rattled off a couple other things, and this guy's his eyes got wider and wider and wider as I was talking, because even though he's older than me, he doesn't like he hasn't thought that far ahead. Like he's more. I'm not going to say selfishly inclined, but more self focused in that what is he going to do for the rest of his life? And where I was like, I'm thinking I don't have the next generation in my family, but I plan to have the next generation in my family. And what am I doing to lay the foundation for that? And um, you have a little bit of follow up, but I'm going to need to be checking out off of this in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, totally. That's what I figured. I was just looking at the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. So, like, what are you setting for foundation? What are you doing today to set the foundation for tomorrow? Right. And that's always really important to look back to. And I always like to reference it like that. I was talking about praying for broader shoulders, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, life is going to come at you. Life is going to continue to come at you, right? Like, I personally had some rough things this year, and I was talking to a friend, and she was going through similar situations with, she had some pretty serious life stuff. And she's like, what do you do when something like this happens? And I was like, well, like 3 situations like that happened to me this year. And here's how I dealt with it, right? Like I didn't run
Yeah.
away from it. I showed up, right? I was like, okay, cool. I need to be more present. I need to do more now, right? And show up and continue to do that. And so I think we'll come back next week and talk about, laying the foundation for your future. How does fitness relate to the rest of your life? With
Yep.
that, we're out.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Late.